Chapter 7, Paris to Berlin, from the year 1885 to 1887. After completing his studies in Madrid, Rizal went to Paris and Germany in order to specialize ophthalmology. He practically chooses the branch of medicine because he wanted to cure his mother's eye ailment. He served as an assistant to the famous oculist of Europe. He also continued his travels and observations of European life and customs, government and laws in Paris, Heidelberg, Leipzig, and Berlin. In Berlin, capital of the unified Germany, he met and befriended several top German scientists. Dr. Fyodor Jagor, Dr. Adolf B. Meyer, Dr. Hans B. Meyer, and Dr. Rudolf Virchow. His merits as a scientist were recognized by the eminent scientists of Europe. In Gay Paris from the year 1885 to 1886, shortly after terminating his studies at the Central University of Madrid, Rizal, who was 24 years old that time, was already a physician, went to Paris in order to acquire more knowledge in ophthalmology. On his way to Paris, he stopped at Barcelona to visit his friend Maximo Viola, a medical student and a member of a rich family of San Miguel, Bulacan. He stayed for a week, during which time he befriended Señor Eusebio Corominas, editor of the newspaper La Publicidad, and made a crayon sketch of Don Miguel Murayta, the owner of La Publicidad, and a statesman. He gave editor Corominas an article on the Carolinas question, then a controversial issue for publication. In November 1885, Rizal was living in Paris, where he sojourned for about 4 months. He worked as an assistant of Dr. Louis de Wickert from the 1852 to 1906, the leading French ophthalmologist from November 1885 to February 1886. He rapidly improved his knowledge on ophthalmology, as revealed by his letter to his parents on January 1, 1886. With respect to the study of the ailments of the eyes, he wrote, "I am doing well. I know now how to perform all the operations. I only need to know what is going inside the eyes, which require more practice." Outside of his working hours, Dr. Wickert's clinic, Rizal relaxed by visiting his friends such as the family of the Pardo de Taveras. It is Trinidad, Felix, and Paz, Juan Luna, and Felix Resurrección Hidalgo, Paz Pardo de Tavera, and was a pretty girl who was engaged to Juan Luna. On the album of his Rizal draw the series of sketches on the story of the monkey and the turtle. At the studio of Luna, Rizal spent many happy hours. He discussed with Luna, the great master of the brush, various problems on the art and improved his own painting technique. He helped Luna by posing as a model in several paintings. In Luna's canvas, The Death of Cleopatra, Rizal posed as an Egyptian priest. In another of Luna's great paintings, The Blood Compact, he posed as Sicatuna, with Trinidad Pardo de Tavesa taking the role of Legazpi. Rizal, as a musician, music played an important part in all the Filipino reunions in Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, and other cities in Europe. The Filipino contemporaries of Rizal could either play an instrument or sing, especially in the home of Pardo de Taveras and in the Luna studio. Every reunion was with the playing or singing of the condiments and other Philippine melodies. Rizal had no natural aptitude for music, and he is admitted, but he studied music because many of his schoolmates at Ateneo were taking music lessons. In a letter dated November 27, 1878, he told Enrique Let and that he learned the solfeggio, the piano, and voice culture in 1 month and a half. However, he confessed that he could not sing well. If you would hear me sing, he wrote to Let, you would wish you were in Spain because my voice is like a braying of the asses. By sheer determination and constant practice, Rizal came to play the flute fairly well. He was flutist in various impromptu reunions of Filipinos in Paris. It is said that he even composed some songs, particularly Alin Manglahik or Any Race. La Deportación or Deportation, which he composed from the Pitan during his exile.
Vivo entre mil cadenas, cual un traidor, cual un traidor. Solo lloro mis penas por mi dolor, por mi dolor. A veces en mi ilusión la libertad, la libertad. Solo veo la prisión, la realidad, la realidad. A luz del día,
In historic Heidelberg, after acquiring enough experience as an ophthalmologist in Dr. Ricketts' clinic, Rizal reluctantly left Gay Paris in February 1, 1886 for Germany. He visited Strasbourg, captain of Alsace-Lorraine, on the other German border towns. On February 3, 1886, he arrived in Heidelberg, an historic city in Germany famous for its old university and romantic surroundings. For a short time, he lived in boarding house with some German law students. These students found out that Rizal was a good chess player, so that they made him a member of the Chess Players Club. He became popular among the German students because he joined them in the chess games and beer drinking and watched their friendly saber duels. After a few days, Rizal transferred to a boarding house which was near the University of Heidelberg. He worked at the University Eye Hospital under the direction of Dr. Otto Brocker, distinguished German ophthalmologist, and attended the lectures of Dr. Becker and Prof. Wilhelm Kochi at the university. During weekends, Rizal visited the scenic spots around Heidelberg, including the famous Heidelberg Castle, the romantic Neckar River, the theater, and the old churches. He noticed that German Catholics and Protestants practice eucharism for the live together in the harmony and cordiality. One of the town churches was used one half by the Catholics and the other half are the Protestants. The flower of Heidelberg. In the spring of 1886, Rizal was fascinated by the blooming flowers along the cool banks, the Neckar River. Among the favorite flower, the light blue forget-me-not. The beautiful spring flowers reminded him that blooming flowers at the garden of his come to Columba. In his mood of homesickness, he wrote on April 22, 1886, the fine poem, Alas Flowers of the Heidelberg, to the flower of Heidelberg. With Pastor Olmer at Wilhelmsfield, after writing to the flowers of Heidelberg, Rizal spent a 3-month summer vacation at Wilhelmsfield, is a mountainous village near Heidelberg. He stayed at the vicarage of kind Protestant pastor Dr. Karl Olmer, who became his good friend and admirer. His pleasant personality and talents at the languages at catching endeared him to the pastor's wife, who was a good cook, and 2 children, Etta the daughter and Fritz the son. So delightful was his stay at Pastor Olmer's home at Rizal's field, the pangs of sadness when he ended his sojourn on June 25, 1886. He returned to Heidelberg, carrying with him beautiful memories of the Olmer friendship and hospitality. The following day, he wrote the Pastor Otmer expressing his gratitude as follows: I thank you for very much once more. You may also receive then you are abroad the same treatment and friendship as I have found among you, and if being forever, I can do nothing for you in foreign country, I can be some service to you in the homeland, where you will always find a good friend if do not die. Of course, the joy of being understood by other people is so great of the one cannot easily forget it. You understood me too. If spite my brown skin with the many people is yellow, and that were puzzling and absorbed. Later, in May 29, 1887, Rizal wrote from Munich to Friedrich, or the son and daughter of Pastor Olmer, tell the good father, Pastor, You dare, Mama, that when I reach home, I shall write to her. I shall need forget how good she is, as well as your papa had been to me. And I was an unknown stranger without friend and recommendations. I shall never forget Williamsfield with its hospitality parish house. The first letter to Blomereth. On July 31, 1886, Rizal wrote his first letter in German to Professor Ferdinand Blumentritt, director of the Ateneo of Leitmeritz, Austria. He had heard that Austrian ethnologist and his interest in Philippine languages. In his letters, Rizal said, in Leipzig and Dresden on August 9, 1886, 3 days after the 5th centenary celebration of the University of Heidelberg, Rizal left the city. He boarded a train, visited various cities in Germany, and arrived in Leipzig in August 14, 1886. He attended some lectures of the University of Leipzig on history and psychology. He befriended Professor Friedrich Ratzel, and famous German historian, and Dr. Hans Meyer, a German anthropologist. In Leipzig, Rizal translated Schiller's William Tell from German into Tagalog so that Filipino might know the story of the champion of the Swiss independence. Later, he also translated into Tagalog for his nephews and nieces Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. Rizal found that the cost of living in Leipzig was cheapest in Europe, so that he stayed 2 months and a half in German city. He corrected some chapters in his second novel, performed his daily physical exercise in the city gymnasium. Because of his knowledge of German, Spanish, and other European languages, he worked as a proofreader in a publisher firm, thereby earning some money. In October 29, he left Leipzig and Dresden, where he met Dr. Adolf B. Meyer, director of the Anthropologist and Ethnologist Museum. He stayed 2 days in the city. He heard Mass in the Catholic Church. Evidently, the Mass impressed him very much. He wrote his diary, truly I have never in my life heard a Mass whose music has greater sublimity and intonation. In the morning of November 1, Rizal left Dresden by train, reaching Berlin in the evening. Rizal welcomed in Berlin scientific circles. Rizal was enchanted by Berlin because of its scientific atmosphere and the absence of the race prejudice in the city. He became in contact with great scientists. He met the first time Dr. Fyodor Jagor, celebrated German scientist, traveler, and other travels in the Philippines. A book with Rizal read and admired during his student days in Manila. Dr. Jagor visited the Philippines in 1856 to 1860, before Rizal was born. In this book, published in Berlin in 1873, he foretold the downfall of the Spanish rule in the Philippines and the coming of the America to the Philippine shores. Rizal had a letter of introduction by Blumentritt of him. Rizal's life in Berlin. In Berlin, Rizal was not mere student or a curious tourist. He lived in the famous capital, unified Germany, for 5 reasons. First, to gain further knowledge of ophthalmology. Second is to further his studies in sciences and languages. Third is to observe the economic and political conditions of the German nation. Fourth is to associate with the famous German scientists and scholars. And lastly, the fifth one is to publish his novel Noli Me Tangere. Rizal on German women. One of his important letters written while he was in Germany was that addressed to his sister Trinidad. dated March 11, 1886. In the letter, Rizal expressed his high regard to admiration of German womanhood. The German woman said to Rizal to his letter is serious, diligent, educated, and friendly. She is not gossipy, frivolous, and quarrelsome like the Spanish women. She is not particularly about beautiful dresses and expensive jewelry, though she could dress nicely like other women in the world. Rizal regretted that in Philippines, the women are more interested in how they dress than in how they will be known. He praised, however, the delicacy of feeling, the fine manners, devotion, and hospitality of the Filipino women, especially those in the provinces who are not yet sophisticated, in only if they can cultivate their intellect by education and by taking more interest in worldly affairs, remarked by Rizal. They can command the respect of all the women. According to Rizal, he advised his sister Trinidad, now that you are still young, you should strive to read and learn. You must not allow yourself to be conquered by the indolence because it costs so little to cast it off. German customs. Aside from the German woman, Rizal admired the German custom which he observed well. It must be noted that he was keen observer of the customs at the people in the countries he visited. Rizal's darkest winter. Rizal spent winters in many temperate countries. The winter in 1886 in Berlin was his darkest winter. During the bleak winter, he lived in poverty because no money arrived from Calamba, and he was flat broke. The diamond ring which his sister Saturnina gave him was in the pawn shop. He could not pay his landlord. He had scrimped, eating only one meal a day, and that daily meal consisted bread and water or some cheap vegetable soup. His clothes were old and threadbare. He washed them himself because he could not afford to pay laundry. Out in faraway Calamba, Pasiano tried desperately to raise money. He knew his younger brother was in dire financial situation in Berlin, but the crops had failed due to the ravages of the locust. The sugar market collapsed. Time was not the essence, but poor Pasiano was delayed in raising the necessary funds. Meanwhile, Rizal starved in Berlin and shivered with wintry cold. His health broke down due to the lack of proper nourishment. He began to cough, and he feared that he was going to be sick with tuberculosis. Never had he suffered such physical blows and penury, so that his soul cried of in despair. That's all. Thank you.